In this tutorial, we're going to examine how to retrieve Statistics Canada data through Estat and then import that into Microsoft Excel so that we can graph it. Now, first of all, Estat is an educational branch of Statistics Canada aimed at serving the classroom, and the address is estat.statcan.gc.ca. When we get there, we have to choose our language, and we have to agree to the terms of use, so we go accept and enter. Once we've done that, either on the sidebar or on this link, we can choose Search CamSim in Estat. So these are socioeconomic databases. Now, if we happen to know a specific word that we want to search for, we can do it that way. But in this case, we're going to look at immigration data. So we're going to come over here and choose ethnic diversity and immigration. And what we want to examine in this case is how immigration has changed over time. And it happens to be this first table we want, immigrants to Canada by country of last permanent residence. And the data starts in 1955 and goes to 2009. So we click over here to retrieve the table. We have to answer a few questions. First of all, in this case, we want the total for Europe, the total for Asia. Now, I control-clicked on that, and you'll see that what happened is I was able to select those individually. And then we want the United States. Those are the three things that we want. We're going to scroll down. We need to then select the period of time. We're going to go right back to the beginning of this data, which is 1955. We're going to retrieve it as a table. And we have many choices. The one that serves us very well right now in order to create our own graph is to choose CSV file, time as rows, and then we click retrieve now. Takes a moment. It asks us what we want to do with that. Well, in this case, we'll just open that right up in Microsoft Excel. So the retrieval is complete. We'll bring up Excel here, and here's our data. So now we want to graph this, so we're going to highlight these cells and scroll down. So I'm just clicking and dragging. Takes a little while. Now, this is an excellent illustration of where graphing is much more meaningful than numbers. Students would have a hard time making much sense of all those figures. But if we go to our chart wizard here on the toolbar, this time we're going to pick line graph. And we'll just go with the very first type here. And go next. It defaults to ranges in columns, which is what we want. Click next, and we're going to call this immigration by source. The x-axis is the dates, the y-axis is the immigrants. We'll go next. We're going to put this in a new sheet. We could embed it right on this sheet with the data, but we'll call it and we'll click finish. So now here's our chart. If we want to jazz it up a little bit, there are a few things that we could do to improve the visibility of it. Perhaps we could take these dates, for example. I'm just going to right click on that, go Format Axis, go to alignment, and right now it's automatic, but I'm just going to increase the tilt on those dates a little bit and click OK when I'm done. We could also choose the colors or the weight for these, so I would go right click on Format Data Series. I'm going to make it a little bit heavier, and I'm going to say that Europe is going to appear in green, that the US, right click, again a little heavier, will appear as blue, and that Asia yellow is a very poor color, will appear as red. When we're done, we click OK, and we can see those changes reflected. Now, you can make up a question sheet which asks students to consider what this graph is telling them. For example, they should be able to note the decline in immigration from European countries and the ascendance of immigration from Asian countries. After they've noticed that general trend, after they've noticed that general trend, then they may also notice this little peak right in here in immigration from actually all three sources, but of particular interest are the peaks in Asian and U.S. sources. And if you look at the dates, that's about 1973, 1974. And you could ask students what might have been going on in the world to create that peak. Well, of course, both Asian and U.S. immigration to Canada would have been affected by the Vietnam War for quite different reasons. Of course, the U.S. citizens would be coming to avoid the draft, or perhaps being disillusioned with their country, whereas the Asians would have been fleeing the conflict itself. Another curious spike is this one right here in European immigration in 1957. We may not have an answer for that one, so that's why we have the internet. And if we just typed in here, immigration to Canada, 1957, did a search, right here in the first link we see Canada admitted a record number of immigrants in 1957 because of the Suez Crisis, which brought almost 200,000 British immigrants to Canada. So students could then research the Suez Crisis and what that was about and why that would have increased British immigration. So that's just one example of using Estat and Stats Canada data to get students to examine something like immigration patterns.